Hey everybody, how's it going? Let's talk about Tiphera, who just came out today. So first of all, let me just get that out of the way. A lot of people like to ask, is she a must-pull? Do you have to get this character? If you don't get this character, then take advice from this gentleman right here. No, I'm just kidding. She's really not a must-pull. She's a great character so far. I like her a lot, and let me explain why. So first, let's talk about her cards. So this character seems very confusing at first, exactly how you should build them and what you should go for. So let me just name all the stuff that I think is good and what type of stuff you can do with them. First, we got Quantum Seed. This is kind of her bread and butter, and one of her coolest things is the whole archetype system where you make these little PlayStation buttons. You make the circle, the triangle, the square. And all the effects are honestly pretty solid. They're really strong, in fact. She has partial Mika, she has partial giant damage boost like Orlia, and then she's able to draw the other two and just get some heals. Really cool stuff, honestly. What are the best epiphanies for this? Honestly, I think this is a really flexible card and you can get most of them. I don't really like the fourth one, the retain effect one, but they all have different uses. This one can potentially be really good if you just want to guaranteed get some of those cards every turn and get some nice combos. This one is really good if you just want to fill your deck with a bunch of them because you have a lot of ways to draw cards or search for them. That can be really strong to be able to spam lots of exhaust cards. This one can be really good to just get exactly what you want, like getting AP when you need it or a damage boost. And this one is really good because it's just a net zero cost card with a bonus. You draw a card, so essentially it costs nothing to have this in your deck. It's like a card like Rally, and then you get to create whatever archetype you choose, and then you get the other ones in your deck if you chose correctly. And to be honest, you're not going to be able to choose correctly, so it's just a 1 in 3 really, unless you're able to use the sands to go back in time. Maybe it lets you choose the right one and cheat. But all of them are incredibly strong and work really well towards how she plays. Now, secondly, this lets you draw those archetype cards and then double the effect of one of them. So you could get 2 AP, which is insanely strong, right? But the Epiphanies, this lets you draw 3 and double one of them. This lets you draw 4, and then you exhaust one card in hand. That can be good comboing with a character like 9 or Kayron or something like that. Or exhausting the Lumen card that draws 3 cards if it's in your hand. That's really strong as well. This one can be good if you just want to consistently draw the archetype cards, and then also sometimes RNG change them if you get a bunch of them in hand at some point. It's a little bit hard to use, I'll say, though. This one lets you just exhaust 3 cards and then draw cards. So this can be really good with a character like Kayron or other people that just make tons of exhaust cards. Especially with someone like Kayron, it lets you forcibly exhaust them to power him up and then also draw a ton. It's insanely powerful, I'd say. This final one is also really fun and gambly, where you could draw up to 6 of these, which is basically getting close to a full hand, which is completely ridiculous, but obviously very RNG. But I would say a lot of them seem pretty solid for different reasons, depending on how you're building her and who you're using her with. Now, this card is very interesting. So she's mostly support, but she also has a potentially really powerful damage skill. So this is really cool, and it just does damage, shield, and heal. And if you are at 1 AP when you use it, then it doubles the whole effect. That's pretty good. That's what Harmonization does. Now, if we look at these, this one just makes it a little bit more powerful. This one potentially can make her a good damage dealer if you're using enough exhaust cards, and she has that buff damage to the next card as well. You could potentially hit pretty hard with this. Now, she also has this really goofy-ass one over here, which changes the cost from 1 to 9 every time you use an exhaust card, and then also, like, potentially at 9 cost, you're doing 1,000,000 damage. But then you need that much AP, so it's kind of just like really, really silly and goofy unless you're able to get this infinite AP setup or something. This one can work with Retain, but it still costs 2, which can be difficult to use, but potentially with characters that are able to activate that Retain, it could be nice. Now, this one I would say is overall the most useful for probably most players. One, it's an upgrade, which means you just remove it from the deck and you don't draw it anymore. And secondly, you get to just do this pretty much every single turn for free. It just makes a 0 cost creation and destruction once per turn. Really strong. So if you're not trying to make her a big damage dealer, or even if you just want more consistency, it can be really good. This one, obviously, the second one is for the highest damage in general, more consistently than the 1 through 9, though, if that's what you want. And she can do a fair bit of damage. She does hit decently hard. Dual creation. Now, when you create 2 archetypes, and it like just saves it over turns, you get to create an identical one in the discard pile. But if we look at some of these other archetypes, she got some pretty cool stuff. So this one makes it initiation. That's the only thing that changes. So you get to start the fight with it. This one makes it so when 3 are created, you create it in hand and you give it retain, which I think is pretty solid. But now you have to create 3. This one's very unique in that it specifically targets the square one, where when you use it, you create one of the other ones that's not square in the discard pile. This one lets you create one of each archetype card, and then the next one you use, you create another one of. So you create 2 of it, but it's a skill, which seems really good. The other ones are upgrades or removes from the deck, which is insanely strong, but this one lets you get 2 of exactly what you want, and then the other ones. So I would say this is an insanely good one here, but this is my favorite overall, and let me explain why. I had some runs trying out her different ones, but this is the one that felt like it had the most impact. First of all, you get to do it turn 1. Secondly, how it works is when any archetype moves to hand, if you create it in hand, if you draw the card, any sort of way it gets into your hand, you create a dupe of it, but removes half of its effects. So it could remove the heal or the AP, it could remove the shield or the damage buff, the heal or the draw. Sometimes you're going to get screwed on that. But in general, I felt like I was getting so many of these cards in my hand. When you ult, you get 2. When you use something that draws 1, you get 2. When you use, for instance, this card, Form Convergence, you just fill your hand instantly with those cards. It felt very strong to me, so I really preferred this one over the others. That said, if I wasn't going to use this one, I do think this skill dual creation is insanely strong because you can just forcibly give yourself extra AP, so you don't really lose out much by using this one. Those are my favorite ones overall. Then we have Event Horizon, has no epiphanies, insanely powerful card. It's got a lot of RNG involved, where each time you use one of the forms, it just adds one of these. It's random, so you could get all AP, all draw, all damage buff, or some mixture of them. Insanely powerful. And then her ult is you get to select which archetype you want to create. A lot of the time it's going to be AP, I would imagine. It's very good, kind of like a Mika ult. And the next 3 times an ego skill is used, you create an additional card. So she's setting up for a longer fight. And then the next ego skill used is decreased cost by 2. It can't go lower than 1, though. It'll go down to 1. Insanely powerful skill set, I would say, overall. Now, I did use her partner, Tiana. I think this partner is pretty solid because it's one of the few partners that's just buffing your entire team with a really good amount of damage. Gives 15% damage to the next attack card up to 2 stacks, although it's difficult to get 2 of those in a row. And then if you've shielded and healed in that turn, you get crit chance to all allies. She's able to pretty easily get that with archetypes, but if you don't have the archetypes, then even her barrier deployment is able to instantly activate that, which can be good. And as for the skill, you get to draw one of her usually archetypes or other exhaust cards. And then the next 2 times you use an ego, you draw an additional exhaust card. It can be really good for filtering through your deck. And then also kind of like a mini version of Tiphera's ult where the next ego skill costs 1 less. I think this one's pretty solid. I don't think you have to get it or anything, but the problem is I don't think there's that many other choices. If you're completely free to play, then you can't use Nyx. And I would say Nyx is probably the second best option on her. And so if you can't use Nyx or Tiana, the more free to play version is probably someone like Alyssa who just gives a really high amount of defense. That's probably the next best choice, which I think feels probably a little bit jank for a lot of people. So I'm not really sure if that's all that worth it for most players. But in general, I don't think Tiana is 100% necessary, but I think she's pretty good overall. I would say some partners feel absolutely ridiculous compared to the next best. For instance, maybe someone like Chizuru, I think, gets a pretty big bonus. But some characters such as 9 get really weak amounts. So you really need to be careful pulling for these partners. And I don't think this is like a must pull partner, but it is a nice just overall permanent damage boost you're giving anytime you're using this character. So I think it's solid. Next, let's talk about the potentials. Pretty simple overall. You're going to upgrade the unique stuff a bunch. This goes for almost every character, most of them. This doesn't really increase defense by that much, so I wouldn't worry about focusing it. The crit chance is nice if you're building some damage on her. And then obviously you're getting this. It just gives crit damage to your whole team. Nice damage boost, obviously. Now let's talk about memory fragments. So my stats right here are actually pretty high in defense, and then I also have a good amount of crit rate and a little bit of crit damage. So this was something I was just testing, but I'm using the Glory Rain set. It's built for her. You literally just get a 15% damage boost for your entire team for the rest of the fight. Insanely strong. But a lot of people were wondering, well, what else do I go for? So I was actually going for as much crit rate and crit damage as I could on these pieces. And the reason why is I don't really think there's anything else you want in the character. You want defense. You don't really need health. Health isn't really a god tier stat. The other stat you can maybe go for is focusing hard on ego recovery if you're not trying to do any damage on this character. So if you're going 0 damage, I think focusing hard on ego recovery could be good. But otherwise, if you're building some damage with her creation and destruction, then I actually would maybe opt for something like crit chance neck, order cup, and defense, well, it's called imagination, but the 6th piece as defense. I would say in general, it just kind of seems the best because the cup can't get defense and neither can the neck, so there's not really many other good choices. So I felt like it seemed worthwhile building damage as her secondary stats. I don't think you really need to if you want to go for a cheaper and easier to build version of her, just stack as much defense as possible, and I think she'll work totally fine. But overall, these are my current stats, not really anything super crazy, but she is putting out a decent amount of damage when she uses Creation of Destruction, so it seemed worth it for me. Now let's talk about her dupes. She has some pretty cool dupes, I'll definitely admit. So the first one is really cool in making it so that Event Horizon gets 4 stacks, potentially. So that's more AP, draw, or damage boost. Sounds very fun. It's not a must get, but it's really good overall. The second one, this is really cool. You basically build your own custom card where it gets 3 effects. So every time you use a circle, it adds a heal. When you use triangle, it adds a damage boost. When you use square, it draws an archetype card. And you just basically stack those effects on this until you've used 3, and then it adds this card into your hand and you get to use it. Seems insanely powerful and insanely fun. Really, really cool. If you really enjoy this character, I would say it's actually probably worth it getting this second dupe because it seems a lot more interesting and more fun to use than most other characters' second dupe, I think. I'm actually a little frustrated it is a dupe because kind of lame to lock something this cool behind pay to win. The third one, I mean, it's obvious. It just boosts the ult. Every character has that thing. The fourth one, this is only really good comboing her with 9. It doesn't really seem all that worthwhile to get if you're not using her with 9 primarily. It's like, okay. This one just boosts the cards. And then this final one is very strange, but from my understanding, it basically makes it so her triangle card, which boosts the damage of the next attack, is not wasted when she uses an attack. And also, it boosts how much it gives. So it makes it so she could actually do a big nuke, and then an ally like 9 or something is able to attack after. So, seems kind of fun. So, who are you going to use this character with? Well, what's really fortunate about her is she's one of the only characters that's a big damage booster to single hits. She's not good with multi-hit characters like, for instance, doing the Malin kicks or Chizuru multi-hits. There's enough characters that buff morale. She's for singular hits. So she's going to work really well with a character like 9. She's going to work very well potentially with, surprisingly, someone like Yuki might even be pretty good with her because Yuki is mostly doing single hits other than the Iceberg Cleave. So she's really good there. She's going to be really, really solid with Haru, who's obviously doing big attacks. So I would say that Haru honestly got a pretty huge buff here because also Tiphera gives you a lot of AP, which is what you need. So you might not even need to use Mika, or you could potentially use Mika and Tiphera and Haru to get so much AP you're able to spam potentially, especially if you have Haru's second dupe, possibly. But I would say that that's pretty much her strongest stuff. I think that she has a lot of future potential as well because all the exhaust cards could be cool. The AP gain is just good for anything in the future. And also just buffing singular hits, any singular hit character in the future she's going to be good with. So I think she has a lot of potential there. Also, she has enabled a very powerful synergy with this specific hue. This one, Flash. Ignition is every time you exhaust a card, decrease the cost of this card by 1. It was a little bit jank somewhat before, but now with a character like Tiphera, you can potentially use this card 3 or 4 times in a single turn just by spamming Tiphera's exhaust cards, which is insanely powerful. So she enabled a new really powerful synergy with this character. So I would say overall, Tiphera is a very strong character. She's not a limited. You don't have to pull her. But I do think she has a really unique playstyle that's more complex than other characters. And I think that makes her interesting because the more complex a character is, with more avenues they can go down, it might mean that in the future they have more synergies with more future, planets or items or common cards or characters. So I think the fact that she has that makes her a pretty valuable support and also just really enjoyable. So overall, I would say Tiphera is worthwhile pull, but if you're really debating it, I think you should just wait to see what the next character is, because we also get to see them revealed before you have to pull someone like Tiphera. That said, I will also say that the new boss that they added into this game mode, Seed of Karmic Fire, the big guy with 2 arms and a face of hands, this guy, absurdly hard to fight in Chaos. I was trying to fight him in the maximum level Chaos with some remotely difficult mods, and unbelievably hard fight unless I was using 9 and Tiphera. So they definitely shield this boss guy for them specifically, which is a little bit frustrating, I think. I hope they do that less in the future, but I know they won't. This character right here, though, is the cat girl. That's probably the next playable character. You may have seen her in the story. So if you'd rather wait for her, then you can probably skip Tiphera. But I would say Tiphera is a worthwhile pull if you enjoy them at all. So anyways, thanks a bunch for watching this video. Hope to see you next time.